Mikey Hembo for Graziano today. We're about to talk about the Cowboys. Roger Staubach, of course, played his college football in Navy and served in the U.S. Navy. So a good question on this day. Roger Staubach won 10 games in a season, 6 times in his career. Graz, that was the all-time quarterback record until which quarterback broke it?
Impressive record for Staubach. I mean, a lot of those were 14-game seasons. Look, I'm sure Peyton Manning and Tom Brady did it. The question is, did someone do it before then? Staubach was 70s, so I'm thinking like 80s, 90s. I'm thinking guys like Aikman and Jim Kelly and John Elway. And I don't know. I got to guess Elway. John Elway is my guess.
Oh, my God, that is right. It is John Elway. I cannot believe you got that. There is such it's a good question, but it's an extraordinarily random answer. John Elway recorded his 7th 10-win season in 1997, 18 years after Staubach retired. That is an incredible win for Graziano on this day. All right, that brings us, he's up 25-14. The world champs were hooping this weekend. Hey, Harry Douglas, Saquon Barkley through the legs. Cooper DeJean throwing it down. Pretty spectacular. Harry Douglas, a quick take if I can from you on this. No one knows the hoops better than you do with your brother and everything else. What do you think of Cooper DeJean here with the follow?
Well, Greeny, I love everything about this. Saquon Barkley with the perfect pass, and then Cooper DeJean finishing it. I know right now Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson from White Man Can't Jump are smiling ear to ear, because that is no longer the case. That's
100% right. I will tell you this, because I studied DeJean when I was getting ready to do the draft. He scored more points as a high school basketball player in the state of Iowa than multiple NBA players who went there. Harrison Barnes is the name that I was failing to come up with. He scored more points in high school than Harrison Barnes did in basketball. Harrison Barnes went on to be a first-round draft pick. So it does beg the question, Mike Tannenbaum, is the Eagles repeating as NFC champs a slam dunk, showing how good they were last year and how good their offseason has been?
No, Greeny. Yeah, I'd say no, Green. Look, I think they're an excellent team, but a number of reasons. First of all, their defensive line, they've lost a lot of good players. Milton Williams, Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat. They've drafted really well, and I think players like Nolan Smith will certainly step up. But when you mentioned this last week, when you go back to that Ram playoff game, if the Rams didn't blow a protection going in on that last drive, they probably would have won the game, and that was in snow in Philadelphia. And then you look at those great teams in the NFC North, be it Minnesota, Green Bay, or certainly Detroit. I think they're all right there. So I'm taking nothing away from Philly. But if you said Philadelphia or the field, I am definitely taking the field. And by the way, Washington in their own division may give them a run for the division title.
The whole division is a lot better. In fact, let's talk about that division here. Let's play a game. Let's do some burning questions for my crew here, and they're all surrounding NFC East teams. Harry, I'll start with you. Let's start with the Giants. How soon will Jackson Dart become the starting quarterback for the New York Football Giants?
So, Greeny, I'm going to go the first weekend in October. They're going down to New Orleans to play the Saints, and he's probably going to be facing another rookie quarterback in Tyler Shugg. You don't want to start in the first 4 weeks. They play the Dallas Cowboys, they play the Kansas City Chiefs, they play the Commanders, and also the Los Angeles Chargers. Let his first start come when they go down to New Orleans.
I like that. I like the timing. Graziano, let's talk about Washington. Jayden Daniels, sophomore slump or jump for the young star?
I got to predict jump. I think this kid's got what it takes. He's in a great situation. They've built up around him. He really connected with the coaching staff. It's a coaching staff headed by Dan Quinn that has some experience and knows what it takes to kind of take the next step off of that promising first year. I think the Commanders are legit, and I think Jayden Daniels is even better in year 2 than he was in year 1.
All right, and then Mike T, the Dallas Cowboys with that addition, George Pickens, does it make them a playoff team?
Yes, I think they are on the periphery of making the playoffs. Not only Pickens, but they added Javonte Wilkins. They've drafted Tyler Booker. And then on the other side of the ball, they got back a couple of good players this year from injuries. DeMarion Overshone, Trayvon Diggs. I think they've had a sneaky good offseason. I believe in Brian Schottenheimer. I think this team will be much improved. They're not going to be flashy as maybe some of these Cowboy teams have in the past, but I think they're going to be meaningfully better.
Yeah, look, I mean, and they won 7 games last year, playing a lot of their season without their starting quarterback. So they weren't all that for all the talk. Look, the attention the Cowboys get is both a blessing and a curse if you were them. Sometimes we overstate how bad things are when they don't look as good as we want them to. Harry, you're my receiver, so I've asked you to put together a little tape for us. What exactly is the addition of George Pickens going to look like and mean for Dak Prescott in this offense?
Yeah, Greeny. So in this very first play, it's a simple, what we call a 3-step slant. And you're going to see George Pickens win his one-on-one matchup. Does a great job. He's a natural hands catcher, plucks the ball out of the air, but he's not satisfied once he catches the football. Does a great job. 4 defenders right there, but none of them gets him down, and it's off to the races for a touchdown. Now you're going to see this play versus the Washington Commanders. Great job versus man coverage, running a corner route. The quarterback throws it inside, but it doesn't matter because of the body control and the way that George Pickens can torque his body and still come up with the catch. And last but not least, 3rd and 1 situation, one-on-one on the outside. He's a 1B to CeeDee Lamb's 1A, wins his matchup again, and it's off to the races for a touchdown. This young man is going to be unbelievable for this offense, and also Dak Prescott is going to also take a lot of pressure off of CeeDee Lamb on the opposite side.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no question. The physical ability, it is equal to just about any player at the position in the entire league. And then let's talk about, let's be real here, okay, Mike T? He's in a contract year. You were a general manager. This is a young man who was playing for a lot of money here. When you were a GM, how much would you take that into account when you were considering making an acquisition?
A big factor, Green. If you go back to those good Jet teams, Antonio Holmes, Braylon Edwards, those were guys that either had 1 or 2 years left on their deal. You're going to get the best of whatever they have. And going back to what Harry said as well, Greeny, George Pickens is going to be a point scorer. It's really hard to double both CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson, who's a really good tight end, and George Pickens. So I think he'll have an exceptionally good year and be productive, especially in the red zone. So that would be a good problem for Dallas to have in terms of trying to lock him up for a long-term deal. I think he will be a meaningful addition to their team.
Graziano, I mean, if it is possible that the Dallas Cowboys could fly under the radar, but with Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and if this winds up working out as well as it can with Pickens, that could be a pretty lethal combination.
Yeah, look, when Dak Prescott has had fully healthy seasons, the Cowboys have been a playoff team almost every single time. So the fact that he's back matters to a significant degree. It's part of the reason they feel good about bringing in George Pickens, even though there are some questions about him based on his history in Pittsburgh in terms of, being in and out a little bit attention-wise to some details. But he's 24 years old. They think they can get the best out of him. They think their leadership structure with Dak Prescott at the head of it in terms of the locker room is going to help with that. And Mike T talked about all those guys they're getting back on defense. I think you were absolutely right. To win 7 games in a season where your quarterback gets hurt halfway through is not unimpressive. And I think it would be foolish to overlook the Cowboys as a possible contender in the NFC East.
All right, we will roll on here. Always room for football in the conversation. We'll get back to the basketball as we continue in a moment.
Xin chào bạn ạ, em đây mình xem rất là với các bạn. Bây giờ mình xem các bạn đây là nồi canh nha, bây giờ mình xem với các bạn các bạn.